Hello, so we're back. I hope that your Christmas was a good one. Let's just begin straight into it. So there's this guy who's called David Murathe, and he said something. He said that Raila and Ruto should retire at the same time. Like in 2022, Ruto should go home, and everybody is all up in knots because of this. I feel that it's an underlying sentiment within central Kenya, within the Kikuyu community. And so I just wanted to study that and see perhaps if I can share some insights into it, and perhaps it might be informative. I don't know. So anyway, this is my title for this video. David Murathe, NDP William Ruto, right? Betrayal is unforgivable. So I think I've let the cat out of the bag. Betrayal is unforgivable. That's in my opinion. So anyway, I feel that betrayal, it breaks all bonds, because people unite because of something, and with betrayal it breaks all the bonds of unity. And then there's a thirst for blood and for vengeance, because somebody feels aggrieved within this setup, right? Mostly the betrayed person. He feels bitter, and there's blood. He's seeking out for blood, and he's seeking out for vengeance, you know. And it replaces the potential for honor and solidarity, because honor holds all bonds together, and that brings solidarity. So the thirst for blood and vengeance, they replace honor and solidarity, and that's it's a sad thing. So anyway, my key points for today: the Kikuyu, they have demonstrated their capacity, the capability of betraying others. They have demonstrated that they are capable of betraying others time and time again in the past. I'll show you how. You can fool all the people all the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. Yeah, you can fool all the people most of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. That's the reality of life. And that we have an uneasy peace, right? And if this uneasy peace, if you don't turn it into a lasting peace, everybody will lose, and it's sad for everybody, right? So anyway, betrayal is unforgivable. That's my title for today. So the background, I already talked about Murathe. He said that Raila and Ruto should retire at the same time. That's saying like Ruto should go home. I think William Kabogo had the same sentiment some time back. But here's one that I can remember. I was riding a boda, and it was being ridden, the driver was somebody from central Kenya, and this is what he said. I asked him, who do you believe will become president in 2022? And he said that he doesn't know who will become president, but he knows who will not become president. And guess who he was talking about? He doesn't know who will become president, but he knows who will not become president. And he was talking about William Ruto. And Murathe was talking about William Ruto. And William Kabogo was talking about William Ruto. And yes, so let me start on my first point. The Kikuyu have demonstrated they are capable of betraying others. They have done that. It might seem a bit harsh, but yeah, the truth is often harsh. I don't think it's disputable over time. And I think I'll show you a couple of incidences of betrayal, so many of them, even within their own people. Like Kenyatta was the first one to betray the Kikuyu. The argument, experience, it shapes people. It shapes people. And it might turn you into a cold, hard stone, or it might make you as soft as a petal. That's what experience does to you. And it determines also how you'll treat others, because you'll always view it in the sense of how you are treated, right? So the experience that other tribes will have with the Kikuyu, or have had with the Kikuyu, it will shape them either into some hardcore kind of stone, or to be as soft as petal, to be open to reason, to be open to, discussion, articulation, and all of those things. Or they just might close their minds to whatever the Kikuyu have to say, and then they do their own thing. So anyway, this is my point. when an elephant destroys the first farm, it's a bit alarming for people. When it destroys the second farm, then people take notice. A lot more people, they take notice. When it destroys the third farm, then the entire village comes together and it's time to chase that elephant away, right? And people need to put that in mind, that the first betrayal, okay, perhaps they wanted to get to power. The second betrayal, perhaps there was something that was going on. But the third betrayal, then something has to be done, because it's now a culture. It's no longer a one-time event. And even when the elephant returns, people will be very, very wary of it. Here's another quote that I wanted to mention. It's from a guy called William Blake, and this is what he says. It is easier to forgive an enemy than to forgive a friend. So let's assume that William Ruto, representing the Kalenjin, and Uhuru Kenyatta, representing the Kikuyu, let's say they are friends, and this quote is right. Then if betrayal comes about, it would be easier for William Ruto to forgive any enemy that he has around than it would be for him to forgive his friend. And it depends. How does this unforgiveness manifest itself? I don't want to speculate on that. I think we had an example of how this unforgiveness amongst tribes manifests itself within Africa. So I want to go into that. Now, I just wanted to give an example back in the day, and you'll see how kind of like history always repeats itself. And as they say, there's nothing new under the sun. It is all vanity and a chase after the wind. You remember back in the 1970s, I wasn't there, you weren't there, most of us anyway. But if you read our history books right, the Kenyatta was president during the first years and during the late 1970s. But people were already knew that his health was a problem, that he was ailing and that he might die soon. And people have started organizing because they knew the presidency of Kenyatta was coming to an end. And it might end when they're not prepared. So anyway, Gema formed some time back, right? And like in 1974, that's when Gema started forming. Around that time, when I think it's the mid 70s or the early 70s. And what happened was, it had become strong. Like in 1972, it had all the MPs from Central and I think from Nairobi. They were backed by Gema. That's Kikuyu, Embu, Meru, and Akamba. The communities, they had come together as communities. And they not only did that, like politics, they also bought thousands of acres of land. They started a clay industry, I think it's also around. And then they registered members and they were active. Like it was going into, it's an economic organization. And it's Gema. And they started in 1976, something they call Change the Constitution movement. Because they knew that Kenyatta was going to die, right? And they didn't want the deputy president to become president, who was a Kalenjin. His name was Moi. And they didn't want him to become president. So they wanted to change the constitution such that they'd give power, in case Kenyatta dies, they'd give power to 3 people. The head of the civil service, the parliamentary speaker, and the chief justice. Now just imagine, there's a president and then there's a deputy president, but the power goes to the head of the civil service, to the chief justice, and to the parliamentary speaker. That is how badly they wanted to keep power away from Moi, who was a Kalenjin. And right now, what are people planning? They see that Kenyatta's reign is coming to an end. And it's hard for them to wiggle. Some have just suggested that Kenyatta should go on, but that will be very hard for them to push through. But they can bring in somebody else. And they can also prevent somebody from gaining power. Like these guys were trying to prevent another Kalenjin by the name of Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. And even there's a person called Kihika. And this is a question that he actually asked, because this is a narration by Njenga Karume. How would Moi become president? Where would our Kikuyu leadership be if and when this happened, such that nobody else can become president? where would our Kikuyus be? How would we let this happen? And so they started to change their constitution movement to transfer power to other places, and those guys were to hold it for 90 days, and then an election was to be held, right? So again, history repeating itself. The same tribes, in this case the son of that president. And again, Moi was a new entity. He was just a teacher. Ruto is just a hustler, or so he says. Anyway, so back to what I was saying. They held their meeting in 1976. That was their first meeting, and people spoke badly about Moi. His leadership style was not for this country. He could not unite the people. They wanted a strong character. And what are they saying about Ruto right now? He is corrupt. He must not hold power. Kenya will be bled dry. And the thing we should notice is that most of the people who argue for certain stuff, even if they're selfish, they have underlying reasons that are justifiable for that. And in this case, you might see that in case of Moi, at that time he was quiet, and these guys, they say that they wanted a strong leader who could unite the country. And right now we know that William Ruto has a lot of cases, corruption cases, and so they say that he'll bleed the country dry. And you can see, but there's something that's underlying that justification. It's just a smokescreen for something else. The prevention of somebody from gaining power, because where would our Kikuyus be if that were to happen? As Kihika said back in the 1970s, history always repeats itself. So anyway, here's another interesting part. Like the Kikuyus and the Kalenjins, the Kikuyus mostly were trying to stop a Kalenjin from gaining power, right? The Luos, on the other hand, they were trying to gain power by force. So happened the 1992 coup. 100 soldiers died, 200 civilians died, including some people who are not Kenyans, right? What do we see today? There's something, the Kikuyu, they're trying to prevent a Kalenjin from gaining power. The Luos, they're trying to do their own thing through the handshake manenos. Things don't change. They remain the same. Why? Because we always remain the same in terms of mentality and in terms of the heart. Because we don't care about each other. We only care about power. So I wanted to give an example of the cost. Like you've had, when there's division in the country, the Luos are doing their own thing, Kalenjins their own thing, Kikuyus their own thing. What happens? 200 civilians dead during a coup. Because there's no unity in the nation. What happens when there's betrayal between people? I wanted to give you an example of, there's somebody they call Alaric. And he was the leader of the Visigoths, right? The Visigoths were running away. They were in Northern Europe. They were running away from the Huns. I think you've heard of Attila the Hun. So the Huns were coming, the Visigoths were trying to run away, and they were entering Roman territory. And so the Romans, they gave them some land to stay. And then eventually the Romans would use the Visigoths, right, as soldiers to fight for their wars. That's what they would do. And the Visigoths would oblige because they wanted land, and the Romans could grant them that land. And then there's this Alaric. He took around 20,000 soldiers. He went for a battle. Can't remember the battle. The Battle of Frigidus, right? He went for that battle with 20,000 men. 10,000 of his men died. And why did they die? Because the Romans, they used to put the other soldiers at the front line, like where the most danger is. And even after he sacrificed so many of his men, he came with 20,000, he left with 10,000. And they did the worst fighting. The Romans gave them no recognition. No recognition for the emperor for the work that he's done. And there's this guy, he was an eunuch in Rome, and he incited the people to kill the Visigoths who were living in Rome. So the Visigoths had to run away. And that was betrayal, because these guys fought for them. And so what did Alaric do? He took back the guys who were running away from the cities. At that time, the Roman emperor had set some place aside. It's called the Ravenna. He had moved the capital to Ravenna. And he thought he was safe there, because now Rome was a bit far off. Alaric went and sacked Rome. If Rome had not betrayed him, Alaric would not have sacked it, because he had deep respect for Rome. But Rome had gone too far, massacring his people, not recognizing him for what he had done, and he sacked Rome. That was the last time Rome was sacked before Alaric was 800 years. So for 8 centuries Rome had not been sacked. But in this case, after a betrayal, Alaric sacked Rome. Barbarians sacked Rome. And eventually the Romans were not safe in Ravenna, because they got to them eventually. But the point I'm trying to make is this, that some people might think that they are safe because they are talking from, they have helicopters and other things, and they can run away very, very, very fast, right? But things catch up with people. They always catch up. And you might say things that might cause division amongst the people, amongst the people on the ground. The mamambogas, they might start arguing with each other. The men might start fighting with each other. The school children might start speaking in their native language instead of speaking to each other so that they can learn. You might do that thinking that you're safe. You're in the Ravenna and you're safe. Because they'll go and sack Rome. They'll go for us where we are. But eventually, it will catch up to you. Like it's catching up to Omar al-Bashir right now. He ran away from the ICC for very long. But when his people don't want him anymore, and he can't hide in Sudan anymore, where will he run? I'm just saying, it catches up to people. Murathe can speak all he wants, regardless of what happens on the ground. Moses Kuria, others can speak all they want, regardless of what happens on the ground. But at the end of the day, things catch up. You can fool all the people all the time, but you cannot fool all. You can fool all the people most of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. I think this was Abraham Lincoln who said that. And the thing that people will do to support their own, like where our Kikuyus, if we let this happen, like Ihika said that back in the 1970s, is that they'll use meritocracy. One, they'll say that this guy, like they said about Moi, he's not a strong leader. We all know how strong of a leader Moi became. But anyway, they were saying he's not a strong leader. And they're saying about William Ruto that he's corrupt, which may be true. I do not know, right? And so they'll put forth the meritocracy argument. Somebody like Peter Kenneth, they will raise him up from the shadows. He's never there when there is time of controversy, but they'll raise him up from the shadows, right? To come and take leadership from Kenya. And you think that will happen? The other guys will take it. People will notice and they will see. They saw what happened with Kenyatta. I will speak about Kibaki and Raila. And they will see if you bring somebody else in the name of meritocracy, that this guy does well, the other guys cannot. They will do that. Again, they might raise another person, who knows, perhaps from the gamer community, perhaps from the Akamba. Perhaps all of a sudden Kalonzo can become a great leader and that we should vote for him. Perhaps that's one way to go about it, to prevent another person from coming into power, as they tried to prevent Moi from coming into power. That's one way of going it. But here's another thing. I want to give an example of, in terms of relationships, right? People can lie many times within a relationship. Like, I don't know, perhaps the women, they usually say that they know this stuff. That a man can come home cheating many of the times, and at a certain times you cannot catch him in the lie. But eventually, you'll find something to catch him. The same with the woman. She can go out cheating all the time, but one day, there'll be a slip up and you'll know. So you cannot be fooled all the time, but you can be fooled most of the time. And I think Kenyans have been fooled most of the time. That only one area of Kenya can produce leaders. Like Hika said, where will our people be for that to happen? But not to dwell on that too much. Regardless of how far a person runs, a lie will eventually catch up to them. That was Donald L. Hicks who said that. Eventually, no matter how much we push this idea, if people start pushing this idea of meritocracy, if people start pushing this idea of Kalonzo, or any other person, to take the place of William Ruto. You can lie to yourself so many times that you're basing it on meritocracy. But that lie will catch up to you. Because underneath it, there's a reality of betrayal. That people came together in solidarity, and that people developed bonds of honor. It was not honor amongst good men, in my opinion, perhaps honor amongst thieves, but anyway, there was that. And if you take that away, again, you replace it with what? A thirst for blood and vengeance. People will be angry. It's not only about getting him out, but getting him out and making him feel that he's out, like they did to Moi. They took him out with a vengeance. And that is why he was ill-treated the day when he was handing over power. I'm not saying he was a good person, I'm just saying he was ill-treated. And that's a reality. Now we've seen what happened between Kenyatta and Moi. What happened between Kibaki and Raila? There was a gentleman's agreement. There was that euphoria in the nation. The Rainbow Nation, the Rainbow Alliance. And everybody was going for change. Yote yawezekana bila Moi. That was the slogan. And then there was the other song, Who Can Bogo Us? I think I remember that one. I think you also remember that one. It was a hit song. And there was a betrayal at that time. And what happened within that betrayal? 2007-2008, political violence. 1,300 people dead. 600,000 people displaced. When there is betrayal, there is always a thirst for blood and vengeance, and it replaces the potential for honor and solidarity. I'm not saying that we have honorable people. I'm just saying that there's that potential when people make an agreement. Like in this case, Kibaki and Raila, they could have developed solidarity if Kibaki kept his end of the bargain. There could be some honor that was created within the nation, within political leaders, if Kibaki kept his agreement, but he did not. And what did it lead to? They had to get him out, and they had to get him out and make him feel that he is out. And they did not only target him, because the guys at the top, they usually talk all they want, but at the bottom, that is where all the violence happened. Just here at the bottom, right? 35 people killed within seeking shelter in a church. I think they were banned. In Naivasha, I saw the images. They were terrible. But anyway, these are the things that come about when betrayal manifests itself. Because betrayal is not some... It evokes hatred for the person who betrayed you. And it's no longer a matter of just, politics, whoever wins, whoever does not win, does not win. It's no longer a matter of, I am corrupt, I know, I want this guy to win because I want that contract. I've lost that contract. It's okay, I'll get another one through other corrupt means because all the politicians are corrupt. No, it's not just about that. This time it's about making somebody feel that they're out and making them remember that betrayal. Remember, Alaric went and sacked Rome because he wanted Rome to remember. You cannot betray us for this long, for this much, and expect that we'll just sit back and let it happen, right? Another thing that occurs, when people are playing political games, the others on the sidelines, they're doing their own things, and you cannot notice those things until there's a coup attempt. Maji machafu was the slogan, was the password, I think. So anyway, to my last point, we have an uneasy peace. Like I keep saying, it's a potential for solidarity and honor. We do not have solidarity and honor amongst these guys. It's an uneasy peace. There's only a potential for that. But a potential that can only be fulfilled if they each keep their end of their bargain. Right? Everyone will lose if we don't turn this uneasy peace into a lasting one. Everybody will lose. Because betrayal is not a joke. Even when you want to make peace, you'll remember how you were betrayed. Even when you want to make an agreement, you'll ask yourself, will this person honor that agreement? Because they betrayed us in the last agreement. A betrayal is not a joke. And I wanted to say this. A lion and a gazelle, right? They might be at the river drinking water together. But as soon as they stop drinking that water, everything changes. Because at first they might be peaceful, drinking, it's all good. The savannah is all quiet. But as soon as they stop drinking, the game changes. Even if one of them stops, the game changes. And that's what we kind of like have in Kenya. It's an easy peace. These guys are the drinking at the river. And unless we turn that into a permanent situation, such that we separate these two guys completely, like the lion and the gazelle, or we somehow we find a way for the two to coexist before they stop drinking, then there will be a problem. If we betray William Ruto, then there are consequences that will follow, because we have not yet built the institutions to withstand shocks. We didn't have them in 2007. That's why we brought guys from the outside, and we don't have them today. That's why he's still keeping guys from the outside to help us with all of those things. Infrastructure here, infrastructure there. We're playing with fire. I want to give an example of South Sudan. South Sudan has, it has 64 tribes. The largest ones are Dinkas. They're 35% of the population, and they dominate in government. The second largest are the Nuers. Don't know if I pronounced it right. So the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, that's the ruling party, it's mostly Dinka. The Sudan People's Liberation Army, again mostly Dinka, unproportionally Dinka, because if it's 35% Dinka only, then that's okay, but it's unproportionally Dinka, right? Actually, people refer to it as the Dinkocracy, right? Because it's basically Dinka. I think the Kikuyu, I'm not sure, perhaps 23%. But imagine now, everywhere you go in the party, let's say, yeah, in the party, it's mostly Kikuyu. Everywhere you go in the army, it's mostly Kikuyu. How would the others feel? They would call it Kikuyutocracy. At least we haven't used that word, because we haven't gotten to that extent. So anyway, the militia, the soldiers, they mostly come from the stronghold of the President Kir, and the Chief of Staff. And the people usually refer to the army, South Sudanese army, as the Dinka army. So you get how they have set aside the Dinka. Okay, you've taken everything. Okay, it's a Dinkocracy. It's the Dinka army. But we'll not sit back. We will fight. About 400,000 people have died in the South Sudanese war since 2013. Not forgetting all the way from the 1980s to 2013. But now after 2013, 400,000 people have died. More than 4 million people have been displaced. We had 600,000 people displaced. These are 4 million people displaced. Can you imagine that? Because even 600,000 was a big number. These are 4 million people displaced. 1.8 displaced within their country, 2.5 displaced to neighboring countries, like we had people in Uganda. Anyway, my conclusion. Betrayal, it breaks all the bonds. The thirst for blood and vengeance, it replaces the potential for honor and solidarity. Again, the Kikuyu have demonstrated that they are capable of betraying others. That demonstration must stop, because people would find it hard to make agreements with them. Like, there were people trying to change the constitution because they didn't want more in power. Kibaki was supposed to honor his agreement with Raila. He did not. There is an agreement in Jubilee between Uhuru and William Ruto. If that agreement is betrayed, how can people trust the Kikuyu once again? Won't we call it a Kikuyutocracy? You can fool all the people most of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. People will always wise up. Yes, William Ruto might be corrupt. I personally feel that he's corrupt, right? But people are not saying that because they do not want corruption. They are saying that as a way of getting him out of power. And they'll bring somebody else in the name of merit. That he has done this, he has done that. Somebody like Peter Kenneth, right? But at the end of the day, it's just a meritocracy. It's a smokescreen. And you can run from your life, but eventually it will catch up with you. And that's the thing. And I hope that people have listened to the video. I hope that we will see that betrayal is a very bad thing and it leads to negative consequences, and that we need to handle it with care, because we don't have the institutions that are ready to handle this kind of scenario, a kind of deep betrayal. And I hope that we don't get to that, because they united. The pretext for uniting was that they would end fighting between those two major tribes. So now that they break up, what's to prevent the fighting? Anyway, I'm not trying to be a prophet. I'm just saying that we need to be careful with certain things. They will talk there at the top. Eventually it will get to them, but we'll have suffered before it gets to them. So let us not suffer. Let us be careful when we talk about these things. The Kikuyus must keep their word. The only way they can push is to push against corruption. And not just to push against William Ruto and the others, but to push against corruption completely. Everybody, every side. And not to push their own as a person who can take over. I do not believe that would be a wise move, because the people would notice it. And I don't think they'll accept it. So that's my advice for today. I don't think it borders, but okay, that's what I had for today. I hope that I've said something worthwhile. I'll see you guys tomorrow again at 5 p.m. I'm glad to be back. I hope that your Christmas was awesome. Mine was awesome, right? I hope that yours was awesome as well. Take care. Bye bye. Tomorrow at 5 p.m.